Fuck hipper. My new patients came straight out of a slasher movie. Between September 2018 and January 2019, 47 inmates died under suspicious circumstances while in the custody of the Louisiana Department of Public Safety and Corrections. Each of these inmates passed away in their sleep, and each had suffered catastrophic internal injuries immediately prior to death. These injuries were uniformly severe and have consistently been described as nonsensical. In one case, the ulna and radius in both the left and right arm had been shattered into what the coroner described as powder. Another inmate's Achilles tendons had been snapped and somehow tied into bow-shaped patterns. The details of the surgery no one knew, but they had to be to save his life. Yet another inmate's ribs had been cracked and relaid in a crisscross pattern. One inmate's leg bones had been removed entirely. Other inmates suffered injuries such as burst organs, severe brain bleeds, and all manner of severe internal injuries. The most shocking injury, however, was inflicted upon an inmate whose spine was somehow tied into a knot. Despite the incredible severity of these internal injuries, none of the victims exhibited any sign of external injury. None of the investigating authorities noted so much as a bruise on any of the bodies. In the absence of additional evidence, the deaths were officially determined to be of natural causes. Shortly after the last death was classified as natural, facility staff members began to die under similar circumstances. This development necessitated further investigation. Upon review, each of the inmates in question had been sentenced for similar charges. While the charges themselves varied somewhat, it is accurate to say that each and every individual, both inmate and staff, had at minimum been accused of a predatory offense. It is important to note that each individual reported debilitating nightmares in the days leading up to their deaths. The nightmares were so disturbing that many of the incarcerated victims confided details of these nightmares to the department therapist prior to passing away. The sheer number of bizarre deaths, combined with the exceptionally disturbing injuries and consistent details of the nightmares themselves, alerted the therapist in question to the possibility that something extraordinary was occurring. Since this individual is agency involved, for additional details review the file of inmate 66, Ward 2, the Unicorn, he was able to contact his agency support liaison with his suspicions. Based on the details provided, AHNSAS quickly determined that the deaths were in fact targeted murders committed by an individual who possessed the ability to learn of these offenses independently and avenge them by the target's dreams. Simply put, the organization was dealing with a serial killer operating on non-physical realms of reality, in other words, on the astral plane. The agency launched an immediate investigation utilizing B-class agents, a unique category of field agent capable of working with and occasionally manipulating non-physical planes. When the investigation concluded, even the most seasoned agency officials were surprised to learn that it was not one perpetrator, but two. The individuals, later identified as Lucy M. and Jesse K., were successfully apprehended by B-class agent Merrick A. In a move that is not unexpected for an individual of his temperament and behavioral idiosyncrasies, Merrick requested to immediately train and commission Lucy and Jesse as T-class agents assigned to him. Merrick's arguments primarily consisted of the fact that individuals with their talents are very rare, and it would be incompatible with agency directives to waste two such individuals who are not only talented, but demonstrably justice-minded. After substantial conferencing, agency administration granted Merrick's request. Both Lucy and Jesse have proven to be highly capable workers. It must also be noted that Jesse can only operate on non-physical realms when he is in close physical proximity to Lucy, and when both he and Lucy are asleep. Lucy is able to work independently without Jesse. Lucy and Jesse were commissioned as T-class agents in 2021. They worked effectively under the supervision and direction of B-class agent Merrick A. until 21st November 24, when they attempted an assassination on an undisclosed public figure. As punishment, Jesse and Lucy are incarcerated at AHNASSQ. Over B-class agent Merrick A.'s strenuous objections, it has been determined that Lucy and Jesse will remain in confinement indefinitely. In order to prevent additional extrajudicial activities, neither have been permitted to enter REM sleep since incarceration. It should be noted that Jesse has not been provided with his sleep aid or medication since 25th November 24. Observation indicates that he has not slept since. Lucy is a 28-year-old female, approximately 5'5" tall, with brown hair. One of her eyes is missing, the other is green. Lucy's diagnoses include addiction disorder and antisocial personality disorder. Jesse is a 27-year-old male, approximately 5 feet 9 inches tall, with black hair. Jesse has heterochromia iridium. One of his eyes is brown, while the other is an unusual yellow color. Jesse's diagnoses include substance abuse disorder, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, and insomnia. Jesse's insomnia has required ongoing unorthodox intervention that unfortunately exacerbates his substance abuse disorder. While Jesse attended the interview, he did not interact with the interviewer. The interviewer would like to note her opinion that due to severe sleep deprivation, Jesse was not capable of participation, and she believes that forcing attendance was inhumane. She would also like to note that intentional sleep deprivation constitutes cruel and unusual punishment and is therefore illegal. Interview subject: the Dream Team. Classification string: uncooperative/destructible/Gaian, Lucy, M, and chthonic, Jesse, S, /constant/critical/Theos. Interviewer: Rachel B and Christoph W. Interview date: 12/29/2024. This started with a cursed videotape. I wish I was kidding. Specifically, it was a cursed copy of All Dogs Go to Heaven. When it happened, Jess and I were working together at a care home for adults with cognitive and mental disabilities. One of our clients was obsessed with all those old off-brand Disney cartoons. Think The Secret of Nim, The Land Before Time, The Princess and the Goblin, and, of course, All Dogs Go to Heaven. The client's birthday was coming up, so Jesse and I went thrift store hunting for VHS copies of those kinds of movies. We watched all the tapes to make sure they still worked, and we did it together because there's nothing quite as depressing as watching kid movies late at night all alone. There's also very little that's quite as fun as watching old kid movies late at night with a friend, so that's what we did. I really enjoyed it. I'd grown up on those kinds of movies. I loved them. Funnily enough, All Dogs Go to Heaven had been my favorite animated movie of all time. So Jesse and I watched it together after work one night. He fell asleep halfway through, right there on my couch. I didn't wake him up. We were both overworked, but he was even more overworked than me. He was also a caregiver for his grandfather. The guy couldn't catch a break. He worked on the clock and off it, non-stop. I was fine. I finished the movie by myself and let him sleep. I've seen that movie probably 2,000 times. I could recite it the way other people recite the Lord's Prayer. So trust me when I say the movie was perfectly normal, exactly as it was supposed to be, scene by scene and minute by minute, until the very end. Instead of segueing into the credits, the tape blacked out. Then it started playing a sequence I'd never seen. So that client I told you about, the one we bought the tapes for in the first place, the scene was about her. It showed her as a very small child playing happily in her room. Don't get me wrong, this wasn't a recording, it wasn't live action, it wasn't like someone had accidentally taped over the VHS. It was still a cartoon, an animated scene rendered in the exact style and color palette as the movie itself. And in this colorful, beautifully rendered cartoon scene, something terrible was done to my client by someone I didn't know, someone I'd never seen. When that horrendous scene concluded, I was full of rage, like an angel of retribution on steroids. Well, no, not an angel. A demon. It would take forever to tell you even half of what happened, and I am too goddamn tired to even think about it. The shortest way I can put it is this: that scene, however it came to be, showed me a person being hurt by an abuser. I was able to use the information from that scene to uncover a very real atrocity that had been inflicted on my client. Once I figured out who the inflictor was, I was able to track him down, From that point, let's just say I took matters into my own hands. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. I told you it was a curse videotape. That's not actually correct. The curse wasn't on the tape. The curse was on Jesse. He accidentally passed it on to me. That tape just facilitated the transfer. I don't know how. It doesn't really matter. Again, it would take too long to explain everything. You don't let me sleep enough to give a full explanation. But basically, Jesse had been dealing with visions of people, although I hate calling them people, hurting and even killing their victims his entire life. In ways I don't want to explain right now, it was an intergenerational family curse cast by an entity called Karachor. I didn't know that then though, because Jesse slept through that scene. And it's not like I knew how to tell him what I saw, so I didn't even try. That's too bad. If I'd said something, anything, nothing would have gone wrong. But it's not really in my nature to confide in anyone, especially not about things that make me feel crazy, or about things that make me feel good. That curse made me feel really fucking good. The curse has two parts. First, you see something horrific. Second, you have to take action to punish the person who did it. If you don't live very long. In all of these cases, one can tell a story to justify the alleged virtues. So basically the curse is this: if you see something, do something, or die. Unlike real life, doing something about it is very easy because the ability to do something is folded into the curse. When you see this horrific incident, it incites rage. The rage opens a channel to the offender's mind that you can only access when you are both asleep. Dream to dream. Your dream drills a tunnel into theirs. Once you're in their dream, you have all the power. There is something profoundly addictive about turning a rapist into something powerless. I don't know if you know this, but you can do crazy stuff in dreams. You can tie people's bones in knots, turn their organs inside out, skin them, smash them, boil them, break them, aerosolize their intestines. You can make it as quick or as slow as you want, as painless or as painful. I preferred to inflict as much pain as possible. Later on, I learned to enjoy humiliating them too. Everything that happened to me was all happening to them. What you do to them in the dream happens to them in real life, with one exception: it doesn't leave any marks on the outside. That's how I got away with it for so long. So Harry said, when the police gave him control, I'm getting ahead of myself again. The curse, we need to talk about how it travels. You know how that curse travels? Through love. You can only pass it along to someone you're in love with. Nice, corrupted little twist on the only thing in existence that actually matters. So I used to love poetry in high school. I lapped up poetry like it was a pool and I was dying of thirst. I swear, there was a poem that reminded me of this curse. I thought the poem went like this. All men curse the things they love. The scent survives their clothes, but the rose's scent is bitterness. To him that loved the rose. But that's not how it goes, which makes sense, because let's be honest, what I just recited doesn't make any sense at all. It's not even that I got it wrong. I somehow combined two poems. I transposed a misremembered Oscar Wilde line. That line actually goes, each man kills the thing he loves, onto a Francis Thompson poem. Francis Thompson's poem actually goes like this. F. You were. The fairest things have fleetest end. Their scent survives their clothes, but the rose's scent is bitterness. To him that loved the rose. Anyway, real or not, misremembered or not, my butchered poem about men cursing the things they love reminded me of Jesse. When this started, Jesse and I worked at a residential home. I already told you that. Our clients' stories aren't mine, so I'm not going to share them. That's something you should try to learn. But I will say that most of my clients had suffered serious trauma. Many of them had a predator in their pasts, and sometimes in their present. I started using that dream channel to murder the people who had hurt my clients. There's no point mincing words. I was a serial killer. When Jesse finally found out, he was devastated. He wasn't angry with me. Jesse is gentle that way. He blamed himself for it. He still does. That still makes me hurt.
Helmich to Helmich,
Parenza countered. That's when he told me everything. He'd had this curse his whole life, yet he never killed anyone. Not because he wasn't tempted. Jesse is a much better person than me, far more concerned with justice and duty and care than I've ever been. Of course he was tempted. But he never killed anyone because this was a hereditary curse, and as a result, he had seen the consequences of falling into the curse with his own eyes. His exact words were, once you start, you can't stop. And if you try to stop after you start, something comes for you. Its name is Karakor. You never want to meet Karakor. It's better to die than let him take you. I believed Jesse. The problem was, I'd already started. For his sake, I'd tried to stop. But once you start, you can't stop. Again, it would take hours to tell you everything that happened, and I am so fucking tired. But long story short, I ended up nearly dead. Jesse saved me by sacrificing himself. I watched him die. 2 days later, he came back. Everything was wonderful for a day or so. We thought the curse was broken, that we were both free and could live normally. About 3 days after he came back, I noticed that Jesse hadn't slept at all. Soon, we both realized he couldn't sleep at all. When you can't sleep, when you can't even have micro naps, you start to fall apart really fast. Jesse started to fall apart. He fell apart to the point where he started to die again. It was because of Karakor. Jesse is the only person I love. I was desperate. I'll spare you the long story and give you the shortest version possible. I found Karakor. My plan was to trade myself for Jesse. I had no idea how it would work, but I assumed it would suit. A life for a life, right? But it didn't go according to plan. In fact, nothing I expected happened. What actually happened was insane. Karakor pulled out one of my eyes and ate it. Then he pulled out one of his eyes. It looked like a star, just like the North Star, and put that star inside my eye socket. Then he lumbered away into the darkness without so much as a word. The last thing I saw were his horns, great twin shadows staining the night sky. I went home, defeated. Only when I got there, Jesse was asleep. Even though I'd lost an eye, I was okay with that. Age discrimination. What I wasn't okay with were his eyes. Jesse had the most beautiful dark eyes, the kind of eyes you can drown in. When I returned from my meeting with Karakor, one of his eyes was still dark and beautiful as ever, but the other was bright and gold as a polished coin. I thought that was the end. Only nothing is ever the end. Not for us. Within a week, Jesse had stopped sleeping. A couple of days after that, he was falling apart again, dying from lack of sleep. One of my least favorite things about life is you are always engaged in negotiations. Even if you don't know what you're negotiating for, even if you don't understand the negotiations, even if you don't realize you're negotiating, you are every minute of every day. And when Karakor took my eye and gave me his and made it so Jesse could sleep again, he wasn't giving me a gift. He was negotiating. By exchanging his eye for mine, I'd agreed to negotiations. My side of the bargain I had no idea I'd struck was to continue murdering people in their dreams in exchange for Jesse's continued health. By the time I finally figured that out, Jesse was almost dead, but he was still awake and aware enough to cry when I slipped into my cursed death sleep. I was crouched over him when I felt air strike my skin and lifted me off my feet. I distinctly remember his soul saying, "Be gone." When I surfaced after committing yet another murder, he was still crying, but otherwise he was healthy. More importantly, he slept that night. Karakor came to me in dreams after that. Every time he appeared in my dreams, he gave me a target, showed me visions that gave me everything I needed to locate and kill my victim. This was a problem for me. You see, Karakor was not as discerning as I was. I'm a bloodthirsty killer, I'll admit it, a vigilante from hell, but even I have limits. I limit my killing sprees to predators. Karakor did not respect those limits, not at all. So I reopened negotiations. The results were I got to pick who I killed, but Jesse had to join me. You have to understand that Karakor has always wanted Jesse. At great cost to himself, Jesse denied Karakor his entire life. I undid his denial, took away his agency, his consent. But I didn't do it because I wanted to. I did it out of love. That's not an excuse, it's not a defense, it's just a fact. I did it because I love Jesse. I did it for Jesse. Jesse will do and has done everything for me. He's done things I asked for and things I haven't, all for love. He never resented any of it. But he resented this. He resents it so much that I think he wishes he never loved me. But I had no choice. It was do or die. That's the curse. See something, do something. And now both our lives depended on Jesse doing something. It was something he had refused to do his whole life up until that point. But refusal was no longer an option. If he refused, we both died. He knew it. Even if he stopped loving me, even if he hated me, I don't think Jesse would ever want me to die. So he became a dream killer too, not because he wanted to, but just because he loved me. I got a job booking inmates into a big regional jail, ironic, I know, and that made it very easy to find targets. Once I was on top of that, the records for past offenders were perfectly accessible. And after that, specifically after seeing the abuses perpetuated on inmates who deserved it, and many more who didn't, it was only a matter of time before Jesse and I started going after the guards. By that time, I could fully control my dreams and direct the creation of the dream channels. I could travel. I could bring Jesse with me. I could see things, secrets and hidden actions and forgotten memories that no one without my abilities would ever see. I uncovered terrible things that have been buried and concealed. I saw things that have never seen the light. Unless you count the light of my starry eye, that's what my eye looks like in the death dreams, a bright and blinding star that sees all and burns what it finds wanting. Yes, he couldn't handle it. He tried so hard, but he simply could not cope. You know, we're talking breakdowns, anxiety attacks, outbursts, mania, psychosis. Anything and everything you could think of went wrong with him. And it was my fault, all my fault, because I was traumatizing him, not because I wanted to, because traumatizing him was the only way to keep him alive. I guess it's not surprising that he eventually refused to sleep. After a particularly and admittedly unnecessarily brutal murder that I take full responsibility for, he promised to never sleep again. To that end, he tried to take his life. I stopped him, but he was in the hospital for days. Meanwhile, Karachor still had his errands for me to run. I was fully capable of running them alone, but that wasn't enough. A solo effort, after all, wasn't our deal. Finally, Karakor came to me in a dream and said if Jesse and I didn't start working together again, and soon, he would start assigning targets again. And I already told you Karachor's targets tend to violate my own boundaries. Second floor. When Jesse finally got out of the hospital, he didn't try to kill himself again, thank God. But he still wanted to sleep as little as possible. I didn't support him in this. I mean, how could I? One night, he begged me to just let everything go, to end ourselves together and move on to whatever comes after. Even if nothing comes after, he said, at least we'll be free. But I couldn't do that. I couldn't lose Jesse. I still told him that. So in order to keep himself from sleeping, and in doing so, prevent me from utilizing him in my death dreams, he intentionally developed a raging meth addiction. Because he wasn't sleeping, Karachor got to call the shots. He was assigning death errands to me nightly, making me see all kinds of things. If you see something, do something, right? If you see something without doing something, you die. Only I wasn't allowed to do anything without Jesse. But no matter what Karachor showed me, and no matter what I said or did to Jesse, he still wouldn't sleep for more than a few minutes at a time. I was desperate. I couldn't lose Jesse. I can't lose him. So I got heroin during one of his 5-minute crash naps. I dosed him up. And that was that. I know that's not really like sleeping, but it was close enough. I kept him under for a long time. Long enough to catch up on Karachor's list of death errands. By the end of it, Jesse was in full-blown addiction. I didn't even have to give it to him. He started taking it himself. He was under so often that I went absolutely wild. I have literally lost count of the number of people I've killed. Jesse and I are both addicts, you know. I need to kill these people. I need to know they're never going to hurt anyone again. I need to know their last moments are every bit as humiliating and agonizing as what they inflicted on the people they hurt. He paused. Every time I think about it, I smile. Jesse was devastated when he passed his curse on to me, but he shouldn't have been. It was the best of both worlds. He freed himself and passed his burden along to someone who thinks it's an extraordinary gift. Everything he did was literally done out of love, and it showed. The only mistakes made were mine. I made a mistake when I tried to stop after starting and brought Karachaw down on Jesse. Made a profound mistake when I dragged Jesse back into this. When I recast the curse, he finally broke for himself. Now he'll never be free, and it's all because of me. I've tried to reopen negotiations with Karachaw a dozen times, to no avail. It doesn't work that way. Once you start, you can't stop. And I made Jesse start. You should let him go. He's not the murderer, he's the opposite. If you get him clean and stick him back on in the real world, he'll be fine. He just needs to be away from me. He's a man, and a good one, a wonderful one, not a monster. Me, on the other hand, you should probably keep me in here. And you should probably treat me well, because I found the Harlequin city bright. Sorry for holding on to that until the end. I really didn't want to tell you, because I didn't want anyone to know. Now that you know, that's all you'll make me do. You won't leave me any time for Karachaw's death errands. That means Jesse is going to die. No, I can't tell you where the city is. It doesn't work that way. I can only show you, and only after we do a whole hell of a lot of work to prepare. I've known for weeks. Go ahead and tell Agnin, assuming they aren't already listening in. It's all we wait. Before you go, there's one last thing I want to tell you. While this almost certainly will never apply to you, consider it a professional courtesy. If you ever see me in your dreams, wake up. If you're not up to date on my office politics, I don't blame you, but also this next part won't make sense. So, for many reasons, this interview was a nightmare. The lead up to it was also nightmarish. It started with a meeting on the 28th. The commander, Raphael, and my boss, Charlie, wanted to talk to me about the way I treat Christoph. But there's a situation. I assumed they were going to tell me to be his best friend. That's been an ongoing point of contention between us. Christoph is resentful that I don't like him. This is extremely unfair, given that he openly doesn't like me. Anyway, my assumptions were wrong. As soon as I sat down, Charlie said, "You aren't going to like any of this. I'm sorry about that. Before we begin, I want to make it clear that we know there's nothing inappropriate going on between you and Christoph. Christoph has even made it very clear that he doesn't like you very much. See what I mean?" "Nice," I said. "However, he's also made it clear that he nevertheless feels very attached to you and is hurt that you aren't similarly attached to him." "It's good that you're not," Charlie said quickly. "When Christoph gets too close to people, bad things happen. And, well, you've been very close for the past few weeks. And I can tell I don't want to be close to him." "We know you don't. But, well, you are. And it was intentional. It's standard protocol. Christoph has to be familiarized with new staff members, particularly female staff, in order to be safe with them. The agency has to step in to facilitate a bond-building process. For what it's worth, it went very smoothly with you. That was great. It demonstrated really substantial growth and progress for Christoph. Stupidly, especially considering how the two of you started off, we were actually hoping to do, well, more with it. Unfortunately, that's not possible, because it's backfired." "What do you mean?" "Well, he's lost 7 teeth in 3 weeks, which only happens when he's, well, attached. None of the teeth are showing any sign of regrowth, and 2 more are loose. I'm sure you noticed. But he's also getting smaller." "I haven't noticed. This is true. To me, Christoph looks as tall and scary as ever. That's because you're 5'0", said the commander. Trust us, he's shrinking. He was 6 feet 6 inches tall a month ago. He is now not quite 6'2". That's never happened before. We've had issues with his teeth, but never his height. He also doesn't want to do his job anymore. In doing his job, he's been with me. That's not his job. That's supervised familiarization protocol. His job is, what does he judge? He's characterized. He's got pride built in. He's got loyalty built in. He's taught his place and he trusts to his protocol to keep your organization running. He didn't miss a beat. Yes, and he's not doing that job because of you. You need to distance yourself until his conditioning begins. I've been trying to distance myself from the day I met him. We know, said Charlie soothingly. We just wanted you to know it's okay to start pulling back. That's not what I want you to know, said the commander. No, what do you want me to know? In order to halt and reverse what you've done to him, we're sending him down for conditioning. It's standard. He does it regularly. He did it right before we introduced him to you. It's supposed to last a minimum of 6 months. Until you got here, it usually lasted a year. So, since you are here and not going anywhere, they're going to change the way they administer his conditioning. It will work. I thought on the other way. Since you are here and not going anywhere, they're going to change the way they administer his conditioning. It will work, I have no doubt. But it is almost certainly going to render him dangerous to you for several weeks. It's going to be dangerous enough that the director doesn't want you in the same ward together, added Charlie. Great, I said. So when do I move down to Ward 2? You're not moving. He's going to be out in the field, but at least for the first few weeks, when he and Raphael return to drop off a target or complete administrative duties, we're going to sequester you in the medical division until he leaves. Where's the medical division? In the basement, several floors down and very secure, so he will pose no risk to you whatsoever. Are you aware of how awful this all is? Like, really? I know it's very stressful, and I want to make it clear, your safety is our top priority. It's Christoph's priority too. This meeting was actually his idea. He wanted us to warn you about the after effects of the conditioning process. Don't discuss it with him, Raphael said. He specifically asked us not to broach the attachment issue, but we feel it provides necessary context to the disruptions you'll soon be facing. Before I could stop myself, I asked, so what do you do to him during these conditioning sessions? We help him become the optimal version of himself. What do you do? Everything you're afraid we do. What does he do? Probably everything you're afraid he does. And he's gotten much better over the years, Charlie said quickly, kissing her as he shook hands with everyone before leaving. It's much better. You wouldn't believe the progress he's made, or the amount of work he's put in, or the humane updates we've made to his conditioning methods. He still has victims. It's an unfortunate necessity, but it's much less frequent and he's far, far less violent than he used to be. And, as you know, he despises that it's a necessity. I believe his feelings on the matter are a major factor in his current regression and symptoms. But, so he doesn't want to do it like at all? No, Charlie confirmed. And why do you make it him do it? Because it's necessary, said the commander. Why do you think we've been having this conversation? When Christoph's conditioning fails, whether due to internal or external factors, he can't do his job. If he can't do his job, we don't need him. We don't keep T-class inmates that we don't need. I haven't wanted to cry so badly in a long time. Is there any way to get him out of it? Is there anything I can do to avoid this? I admit, I threw a tantrum. Then I stormed off and, despite explicit instructions, I went looking for Christoph and found him brooding in his favorite conference room. So, I said, what exactly does attached mean to you? To his credit, he answered calmly, it means I care about you. I still don't like you, but I care very much. Do you care about any of the victims they throw you during conditioning? He watched me for a moment. I knew he was deciding what to say, and I already knew that I didn't want to hear it. But I was far past that point. Listen, he said. I am going to tell you something. It's a very ugly thing that I did not want you to know, but it is the truth. You always want the truth. So here it is. I have never cared about anything I fucked. And I have never fucked anyone I care about. I have never wanted to. He was right. That was indeed one of the ugliest things I've ever heard. I know what you are afraid of from me, but you don't need to be. I am very safe to you. And no matter what they told you in your meeting, I will be safe to you even after they fix me. This is General Dalton Pinkers. I wouldn't call it fixing. I would. It makes my teeth grow. You know how I hate my teeth. But it will make me myself again. It will make it so I can be out in the field again, working. When you and I cannot work, we are no use. When we are no use, we go to Ward 2 if we are lucky. I am not lucky. Before I could think it through or even wonder how he would interpret the question, I asked, what if they let you work in the Pantheon with me? Would they still need to fix you? They will never let me work permanently in the Pantheon, and they will not let me work with you. Even if they did, you are even now looking at me like you did when we met. I deserve that look from many people, but I do not deserve it from you. I would not work with you permanently, even if they told me to. He started to storm off, but I beat him to the punch. And in spite of myself, I went straight back to the commander's office. Let him work with me, I said. He's good with the inmates. He is good with Ward 1 inmates, the commander interrupted. All the Ward 2 inmates, where the hard work in this facility actually is, hate him because he brought most of them into custody. Well, then he's worked for 200 years in a row. At least let him have a vacation, or light duty, or... Charlie, are you sure there's nothing going on between them? That's not how he works, said Charlie. Then he turned to me. We can't. We've tried. Trust me. We care about his well-being more than you do, but in the absence of a replacement, he has to be where he is, and Christoph is just not replaceable. I tried to argue, but the commander finally lost his patience and dismissed me. I went straight to bed, where I tossed and turned for hours. When I finally fell asleep, I had the weirdest dream. The principal subject of the dream was what I can only describe as a short, sparkling goblin man blowing bubbles at me while magic dance played in the background. Dream logic required that I ignore him and the song. But the longer it went on, the shakier that dream logic got, until I woke up in an irrational rage. Despite the rage, I was almost too exhausted to think. Oh my God! On top of everything, I'd overslept, so I threw on my uniform and hurried out into the cafeteria. Sitting at the very first table was the sparkling goblin from my dream. He looked distinctly less goblin-like, but almost as shiny, glossy and bright and made of contrasts. Almost too eye-watering to look at, even though I kind of wanted to. When he saw me, he smiled broadly and rushed over. Pleased to meet you. I'm Merrick. I'm a B-class agent. You know what those are, right? You've read the handbook? Great. Call me Mary. I saw you in your dreams last night. Your dreams are so boring but so stressful. How do you manage that? I don't really know why. Maybe because I was scared. Maybe because I was exhausted. Maybe because he was overwhelming. Maybe because Christoph's words were still echoing in my head. But I started to cry. I was mortified, but Mary shrugged it off. At least you didn't panic. Half the newbies lose their minds when they meet me for real after meeting in dreams, Yevna said. But still, do you go in everyone's dreams? Yes, I know it's rude, but I like doing it, and I'm in doesn't stop me, so I do it. Then he explained that he was here to attend the interview for the dream team. It's not that I don't trust you, I do. I've heard you're very inmate-friendly, which makes sense, since you're an inmate. But beyond that, I've heard great things. Jessie and Lucy aren't even worried, but we're close, them and I want to make sure they feel supported, especially under the circumstances. So I'm here, and I get to meet you too. You're great, really. I heard you got the Harlequin back into containment. The Harlequin put himself back into containment, Christoph said, sliding into the chair between me and Mary. But she did very well. Christoph, Mary said heartily, I saw you in your dream last night. Yes, I know I would apologize, except I warned you last time. Oh, no apologies. It was very... This is your last warning. Gotcha, no offense. So does that mean you're... Wait, are you shorter? Yes, skinnier too, and down 7 teeth. Mary frowned. Is that why they recalled you to the Pantheon? No, they recalled me to the Pantheon because this new interviewer here keeps breaking the rules. I am supposed to keep her from breaking them, but she breaks them anyway, so I don't know why I am here. I belong in the field. I tuned out, daydreaming about sleep, and I only tuned back in about 10 minutes later, after they started fighting. I tried to slip away discreetly, but Christoph took the opportunity and followed. I hate him, he snarled. I hate him. He's going to be in our interview today. He swore and stalked off. But when we all convened 3 hours later for the Dream Team interview, Charlie wouldn't let Mary into the room. I was relieved. I was much less relieved after Lucy disclosed that she knew the location of the City Bright. I was even less relieved when she and Jessie were taken down to medical for sleep aids. I was less relieved than ever when I learned that Christoph's conditioning is scheduled to begin on Friday. I was least relieved of all when they told me I'm interviewing him on Thursday in order to extract information necessary to ensure his conditioning is successful. I think I'm going to refuse. I don't know how yet. I don't know what will happen when I do. But just like Lucy, even I have a limit. And willingly facilitating Christoph's redevelopment into the worst version of himself is well past it.